торгує територіями, бо Україна не торгує.
guests, on behalf of the organizers of this conference, Crimea Global, Understanding Ukraine Through the South, I'm happy to welcome you to Kyiv. This is the third annual international conference dedicated to the dialogue between the government and the civil society, the academia and media from Ukraine, as well as the civil society leaders and researchers from Asia, Africa and Latin America. And this is the only continuous large-scale event. There have been many efforts put to make sure that this conference is held for the third time in Kyiv. But first, I would like to tell about the people who made this conference possible. This is our armed forces of Ukraine, men and women defending the Ukraine from the Russian aggression. And I would like to honor them with a minute of silence for them who gave the ultimate prize in this war and for the victims of the Russian armed aggression. And after that, we will hear the Ukrainian anthem.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, the motto of this conference is holding on, speaking out. Holding on and speaking out. And throughout these 2 days, as part of this conference in Kyiv, we will be discussing many issues related to the changes in the current war, the role of new technology and the threats to the civilian population. We will be talking about drones safari and the challenges of this war and the perils we can see around the globe. And first of all, I would like to tell a little bit to you about our guests that have come to Ukraine. We have representatives from the Congo, Argentina, Kyrgyzstan, India, Malaysia, Costa Rica, Myanmar, Kenya, and many other countries. they will join us online from their countries as part of panel discussions. And the participants of this conference, before coming here, they visited Lviv and Kharkiv. They saw the places where civilian infrastructure is destroyed. They visited the underground schools and memorials and cemeteries, and they also met with the local government. Throughout these 2 days, we will continue to talk with them about how we can withstand and resist the Russian aggression, and the fact that the war started with Crimea and it will end with Crimea. Only after Ukraine liberates all its occupied areas, we will be able to say that there is peace. In addition, I would like to name the organizers and partners of this conference, the organizations that made this conference possible. First of all, I would like to thank the representative office of the president in Crimea, as well as Crimean platform, Zmina Human Rights Center and Media Initiative for Human Rights. These are the conference organizers. We are also grateful to our partners, the Ukrainian Institute, Pan-Ukraine, Media Center Ukraine, Truth Hounds, and Transatlantic Dialogue Center. This conference would not be possible without the financial support of our partners, including the Partnership for a Resilient Ukraine, International Fund, Ascolti Dir Fund, and Yesar Yednanya, and other organizations. And to start our conference, I would like to give the floor to Olga Kurishko, permanent representative of the President in Crimea. Hello to everyone. You know, I'm really proud to see the results of my work. When I look at the number of partners and participants, I can only be proud and enjoy that every year our conference is growing and the interest is amplifying in this conference. And today it's an honor for me to open the third conference in our capital of Ukraine, in Kyiv, capital of free people, and welcome you here. As Tatiana said, this conference was made possible by the armed forces of Ukraine because they are defending us from the armed aggression. Today, we are going to talk about different things, different topics. And first of all, I would like to thank our guests who traveled that much to be with us. They have visited Lviv and Kharkiv. And I'm grateful to the local government that supported us in organizing their visits. And I think they will tell about their impressions during the discussions or during the coffee breaks. And together with the local government, with the veterans, we walked around the city, we laid flowers and toys to the memorials of the children who died, and we also introduced our guests to our country, to challenges it is facing. And today, I would like to remind that the war started in 2014 with the occupation of the Crimean Peninsula. And today, I urge you to make sure that we will withstand this war. And as we defend our land, we are looking for new ways to cooperate and develop. And such formats, they enable us to make new connections, make new friends, talk about new projects, and do even more to liberate our country. That's why I would like to wish everyone fruitful event. Hopefully this conference will bring you a lot of new connections, and glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Olga, for this speech. The Crimea's representative office in President's representative office in Crimea has been supporting this conference, and hopefully this conference will continue in the next year. Now I would like to give the floor to Irina Mudra, President's office deputy.
Esteemed representatives, our partners, friends, colleagues, my speech is not going to be about the war between Ukraine and Russia. I'm going to turn to the community of states who know very well what is the external intervention is and what the fight for liberty is. So I'm now appealing to those who, not from the textbooks, but from their own experience, know the cost of peace and liberty and justice. We can see how in the countries of Africa and Asia, there is a repetition of this strategy of influence through aggression, information aggression and manipulations. We can see it in Africa through military expansion, through private armed structures, and also as armed violations that were in Central Africa. So people are being transported to Russia, and they are promised contracts, they are promised learning, but in fact they're sent out to assemble drones, they're sent out to the war. And so in Kenya and Uganda we can see such cases, and we can see in South America through the external influence and through the attempts to influence the liberty and also to impact the elections. Russia today is just the peak of the iceberg. We remember how Russia used to use humanitarian influence to put pressure, to put Ecuador under pressure, and how it became a global problem for the whole region. We can see it in Asia through technological blackmail and through hampering the work of the developmental organizations and institutions. So these are not isolated cases. This is a systemic strategy where war in Ukraine is one of its formats. And I want to reinforce the message that, it's from the Crimea when this expansion started. So it was a first attempt in 2014 to change the boundaries in Europe after the World War II. Russia used the same methods that we see it used in different parts of the world. The manipulative referendums, the repressions, the mass disinformation, and the repressions against Tatars and Ukrainians. And the Crimea has become a polygon for this policy. And this war could have never happened if there had been the oppression. So this is now the time to join the efforts and to see the root cause of the war. The trust that we are building is not just part of Ukrainian interest. This is a universal principle. We are creating the mechanisms that can be of use to anyone who has fallen a victim of the war in our territory. The international registry of losses has already been registering the losses and to where the businesses and the accommodation where the homes are registered. So this is we are truly urging the countries of the Global South to be part of this process, not as observers, but as creators of the new epoch of international law. When we're together, we're replacing the logic of fear with the logic of responsibility. So the liberty, this is the right of any nation to live without pressure, and that there will be implications no matter who violates this principle. We want to live in the world where Ukrainian farmer, African student, Philippine teacher knows that the truth matters because it is being protected by institutions and that there are people behind this struggle. And we are offering you to become part of the alliance of justice, not because we need the help, but because we believe in the power of unity, because the new rule is not cannot appear on its own. It's formed by those who are fighting together. We're forming the history. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes.
Thank you, Irina. This conference is part of Ukraine's civil society efforts and part of their advocacy with the Asian, African, Latin American countries to make sure that people in this country understand better what is going on in our country, to build solidarity with Ukraine. And this effort complements the huge activity conducted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Serhiy Kyslitsa, First Deputy of the Foreign Minister of Ukraine. The floor is yours. Hello to everyone, dear members, dear participants, dear ambassadors. I welcome everyone to this conference. Thank you for this interest, for concern in Ukraine. And despite almost 12 years of temporary occupation of the Crimea Republic and 4 years of Russian full-scale aggression, the world remains committed to support Ukraine in Ukraine's aspiration to restore its territorial integrity and sovereignty within the international recognized borders. What's important to us is to make sure that there is interest to Ukraine is not only in Europe or North America. There are people who know about us in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. Annually, the Crimea Global Conference, which has been held for the third time in Kyiv, it has become a unique platform where Crimea is talked about by representatives of different countries. And your interest proves that the Russian aggression affects not only Ukraine, but also the global security. It's really important that the participants include people who are committed to protecting human rights. Ensuring the fundamental human rights and freedoms is absolutely essential to residents of temporarily occupied areas of Crimea, where Russia is systematically violating the international humanitarian law. Russia is trying to convince the world that Crimea has always been Russian, but historic reality is different. The imperial annexation in late 18th century, colonization of the peninsula, deportation of Crimean Tatars by Stalin in 1944, and a decade-long ban on return. Today, the occupation involves shutting down Ukrainian schools, creating environmental disasters, removing cultural property, mass human rights violations, and indoctrinating Ukrainian children. For Russia, Crimea is a resource for imperial ambitions, for the military force in the Black and Mediterranean seas, a resource to capture new territories and to attempt to go back to the world of the 19th century, where the greatness of a state is allegedly defined not by the dignified living of citizens, of technology development, but by nuclear weapons and capacity to enslave peoples. That's why I would like to emphasize Russia's war against Ukraine is not just a war for land. It's a classical neo-colonial war, where the world's largest country is fighting not for kilometers, not for thousands of kilometers, but it is trying to enslave an entire people. For the Kremlin, Crimean and Ukrainians are a resource to restore their imagined imperia, to bring back the peoples that were part of the imperial core. This is the last century's thinking that was causing damage to the colonized people, the people that were fighting against. And the entire world understands that colonial empires are a thing of the past, except for Russia. The permanent representative of Kenya, Martin Kimani, while addressing 3 days ahead of the full-scale invasion, while addressing the UN Security Council regarding the situation in Ukraine, he said, I quote,
"From the embers of dead empires in a way that does not plunge us back into new forms of domination and oppression."
Russia's aggressive war changed its image in the world. It destroyed the myth about the second army of the world. It has been proved that Russia is unable to keep up the agreements, and the arrangements made with it are not worth of the paper it is written on. The Kremlin looks at their international partners as a resource. We can see the African, Asian, Latin American citizens bring, as Irina said, brought to Russia for work or education. They are recruited to army and the defense sector. And those who manage to survive or get captured, they ask for their governments to bring them home. But it's better not to let people go and end up in such situations. Hopefully, the media and experts who are here will bring home the truth to their citizens, because the life is better than more valuable than the money. Because for Russia, all of them are consumables. Despite the international partners' efforts, despite the efforts of the United States President Donald Trump and European leaders, Russia is still not showing any willingness to peace. This year is the 80th anniversary of the UN establishment, and the 5th summit of the Crimean platform was part of the UN assembly meeting on the sidelines, and it confirmed the importance of upholding the international law and unacceptance of aggression. You have to remember that 80 years ago, in November 1945, the Nuremberg Tribunal was launched, delivering accountability to Nazi criminals for the crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed during the Second World War. The aggression of Russia should be, and also in accountability for the perpetrators. Ukraine is contributing to the global security not only on the battlefield. The Grain from Ukraine program or Food from Ukraine program, they show that even under the shelling, we are supporting other countries that are most affected by the food shortages. This is our contribution to supporting the Global South nations who know well the price of freedom. And Russia is destroying the port infrastructure to prevent Ukrainian exports of grain, and in that way they are depriving peoples who are suffering from famine of this grain. Hopefully this conference will be another step towards the world seeing all the crimes of the Russian occupation and to realization that Kremlin's colonial policy is not acceptable. Lasting peace can only be upheld only if in the context of the international humanitarian law. Now, I would like to conclude by reminding that thanks to God, Crimea became a symbol. It is in Crimea, not in San Francisco. And I continued talking about this in the US, in Ukraine. It is in Crimea, in Yalta, the UN was conceived. It was in Crimea that the foundations and frameworks of these organizations were established that enabled the Soviet Union and the permanent members of the Security Council to dominate the world. In San Francisco, these agreements were expanded and put on paper. And it's not an accident that Yalta was mentioned not only in 1945, but in other places as a place of very dangerous agreements. I would like to remind that in 1975 in Helsinki, there was a summit that resulted in Helsinki Treaty being signed. And one of the principles behind that treaty, the principle of the borders inviolability. But I would like to remind that, in my opinion, it's not an accident that this Helsinki summit in New York Times in 1975, it was called the Super Yalta. Because and it will be a surprise for many of you, that it was the Soviet Union, it was the Moscow, that was insisting on making sure that in the Helsinki Treaty there should be a border inviolability law integrated. And this is an evil irony. The inviolability of the borders was upheld by Moscow when many Western countries were against including that principle. And some countries didn't care if this principle would be there. But Moscow insisted on it and then violated it. And it again goes to show that you cannot trust Moscow's word. You cannot trust documents signed by Moscow. You need to build your policies and your actions based on the sensible assessment of Moscow's actions. Helsinki is a symbolic place not only because of this treaty signed in 1975. This place is also symbolic because in 2019, on the demand, as demanded by many European countries, when there was resistance and protest from Ukraine and Baltic countries, Russian Federation was brought back to the Parliamentarian Assembly of the Council of Europe. And in a couple of weeks, there will be a summit in Helsinki, the OSCE summit. And our duty is to make sure that this meeting does not turn into Yalta II. That's why the discussion that is going to be held here at the conference, it should support the politicians, experts, to understand better the situation in the world of propaganda and fakes that are dominating. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey, for the work that the Foreign Ministry has been doing, and you personally to convey the message and to get this message across to the international community, the truth about the armed aggression. So when it comes to Crimea, you cannot really envisage or picture the peninsula without its peoples, the Crimean Tatars. So it should be voiced, the situation should be voiced on all the platforms when it comes to the accountability. And I want to give the floor to Rafat Chubarov, head of Majlis of the Crimean Tatar people. Dear participants, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters, it's my pleasure to turn to you and with these words, brothers and sisters, as I'm representative of Crimean Tatars, indigenous people, whose motherland is also for Karaim and Krimchak peoples is the Crimea. And for most of the countries, the representatives of which are present here, so they also are inhabited by indigenous peoples who are protected by their states. In Ukraine, the rights of the indigenous peoples are supported by the constitution, and also since 2021 there is a law on indigenous peoples of Ukraine. And I'd like to, as a greeting, to voice several things that I find important. In the first place, the Russia-Ukraine's war that started in February 2014, when the Russian troops occupied Crimea, and has been ongoing for almost 12 years. There will be 12 years exactly next February. It not just violated the borders of our country, but also it became the moment of self-learning. So Moscow was trying to break our will, and they didn't know, and they couldn't envisage what it would bring in the result. The war crystallizes Ukrainian nation, and we're holding strong together with all the nations, Armenians, Gagauz, Krimchaks, Crimean Tatars, all those who Ukraine is a joint home to. They're different in religious affiliation, but in language, but they are all standing strong to protect the sovereignty and the liberty of their state, to be strong against the imperialistic attacks. There is another threat. Even if we imagine that we will not let it happen, of course, that the world will not be able to achieve the long-lasting peace supported by the international law. This will mean the undermining of the grounds of the international system that guaranteed the stability after the World War II, so that upheld the principles of integrity and inviolability of borders. Then there will be not there will be the power of lack of right in the world. That what will rule globally. Then if someone is successful in biting off a bit of one's country, then what will happen next? Then the Russian imperialistic machine will be able to step on the threshold of any country, any state, just because they're more vulnerable or weaker. Then any borders will make sense if the world accepts that the territory can be just won like that. My friend, first deputy foreign minister, Serhiy Kislitsa, he referred to Yalta. I want to refer to Yalta too, because back then, the principles were conceived of international order following the war that was still ongoing. But let us remember that Yalta took place in Crimea, where for 9 months prior to that, where Stalin just deported by force the indigenous peoples. People were dying, some were in exile, and in Yalta the power holders were dividing the world. So the tectonic shifts that can take place following the Russia-Ukraine's war cannot take place at the expense of any people, no matter how many they are. So the fight of Ukraine today is not just for its own interests, but also for the world to remain the world of rules. And my third point today would be that in February 2014, we couldn't prevent the occupation of Crimea by the Russian troops. And in 2022, we received the all-out invasion. Now we cannot but finish this war by liberating Crimea and restoring the integrity of borders of our state. So in the Crimea, the indigenous peoples and the ethnic Ukrainians, the citizens of Ukraine, are waiting for this liberation. And I believe that we will be able to liberate them and to liberate Crimea. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.
Thank you, dear Rifat, for the struggle that you have been continuing for many years, supporting Crimean Tatars in occupation as well. Dear colleagues, when we are talking about Russian aggression, it has quite a specific human dimension. People lives that were broken as part of this war. As of now, tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians and military are in Russian captivity. And Ukraine is fighting for every person to liberate them from the Russian detention. Now I would like to give the floor to this specific person, a journalist, Dmytro Khylyuk, who spent over 3 years in Russian captivity and was liberated, was freed in late this year. Hello to everyone and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. My name is Dmytro Khylyuk. I'm a journalist from Union Agency, Kyiv. And I would like to tell you my story, the story of my captivity. But also I would like to emphasize that this story is typical of over 2,000 civilians who are now the Kremlin's hostages in Russian jails. And I will avoid telling about the detention, or I will be talking about their stories who were abducted by the Russian forces, sometimes in early days of the war, in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, in Zaporizhia Oblast. I get to know these people in the Russian jails. I was abducted from my own home together with my father at the beginning of the war on the 3rd of March 2022. First, we were held in our village near Kyiv, where I live, in a dark place. And immediately as we were captured or abducted, they tied our hands, they tied our eyes, and they put us in this place and kept for 3 days. There were dozens. There was a dozen of people there, people from different backgrounds. They were not explained why they are there. There was only once per day a toilet time, and some strong people were even kept without toilet at all because the occupiers were afraid of them. My father, 74, his execution was faked, and just to remind you, it was 74. Then he was forced to write a farewell letter to my mother. He believed that he was going to be killed, but luckily in 9 days he was freed with some other elderly people who had different types of disease. Other people from 17 to 60 years old or 65 years old, all of us, we were transferred to Hostomel for a week, then Belarus, then the city of Rovlia, 1.5 days. We were then brought to Russia, first put into a jail in Novosibkovo city. It's Bryansk province, 70 kilometers from Ukraine's border. The condition there was horrible. This was a 19th century jail. It was in disrepair, no glass in windows. The sewage smell was terrible, and we spent there over a year until the 11th May of 2023. We got almost no food. They fed us 3 times a day, but it was impossible to eat it. It was water with salt, without sugar. And just for you to understand, people had to eat the toothpaste in order to create an illusion that they ate something. People got thick, slim. They lost weight in this jail, and I know people who were just big people, 110 kilograms, and after the captivity they weighed 55 kilograms, like Gestapo prisoners. And once, when we were at a walk, that's what they call it, one of the guards he told me, "Welcome to Buchenwald," and he was proud of that we are keeping Ukrainians in the concentration camp. When it comes to their treatment, we were starving, we were cold, there was no heating. Every day from the 6 of a.m. to 10 p.m. you had to walk to make sure you don't get cold, that you don't freeze. The Russians didn't allow us to sit down, to lie down, and to put blankets. So it was a building in disrepair, and the guards were trying to make sure that our suffering are as severe as possible. Every day they forced us to sing the Soviet anthem. Actually, it's the Russian anthem, but the music was of the Soviet anthem. And people who sang badly or poorly, they could be punished. There was constant indignity. We were unallowed to look the guards in the eye. They were all masked. They tried to hide their faces because they understood that they are committing crimes. The second jail, I was brought there with other prisoners. It's a big colony in Vladimir Oblast, 200 kilometers from Moscow, and both Ukrainians and POWs, we were held in 3 sections, in 3 buildings, to make sure that we are unable to mingle with the Russian prisoners convicted for different crimes. And in that prison, there was psychological pressure and torture. We were starving, we were indignified, and in the morning and every evening they switched on Russian and Soviet songs of the 1960s, 1970s. And we just had to listen to this music throughout the day, and it was really exhausting. really stressful, and it was putting the psychological pressure on us. And in both prisons, in these colonies, in these detention centers, they didn't switch off the light. They were able to dim the light, but they didn't do that. They kept the light on to make sure that people have to sleep under the light to torture them. When it comes to beating, we were constantly beaten, mostly young guys, and those who were physically strong or who had some physical skills, fighting skills. Everyone was beaten, 20 years old and 60 years old, regardless of whether you are a civilian or a military, whether you are loyal to the guards, because you are a Ukrainian, and that's enough to beat you. And I spent up the time until the 22nd of August this year in this condition. Then I was freed as part of the exchange, but there are other people in the same conditions. There are over 2,000 civilians in Russian jails who are not competent. They were just abducted, maybe first for the exchange, but now maybe they are going to be used for blackmail. And I would like to emphasize that once we asked the guard in the jail, we told him, we understand that there is a war between our countries, that you are part of the military, that you have to obey the orders. And we asked, but why do you hate us personally? Why do you have this hate, this beating? We don't have anything to do with you. We haven't met before. And this guy, he told us, who gave you the right to live this good life as you do? That was his answer. And I would like to debunk the biggest Russian lie. When I was in jail, I was really dreaming of telling about this, and luckily I lived to make this dream come true. Their lie is that they invaded Ukraine because they are not happy with Ukraine's foreign policy. They don't want to see Ukraine in NATO, in the EU. They are saying they invaded Ukraine because Russian speakers are oppressed in Ukraine, that Russian culture is not supported. But it's not true, it's a lie. And as a proof, I would like to give this example. In the second jail, it's Parkin's village. There is one cell in this prison where they keep the people, Russian people who refused to take, who refused to take the Russian passport. These were Ukrainians who didn't take the Russian passport. They told about that about 2 years ago. They were put in the same cell, separate from other prisoners. But despite their loyalty to Russia, they are in the same conditions. They are beaten. They are starving, and no concession to them, despite their loyalty. So it goes to show that the key reason for this war, for this invasion, is to eradicate Ukrainian identity. They want to make sure that we don't exist as a nation, that there are no Ukrainians, that we turn into these funny ho-holes, as they call us, that they got used to see in the Soviet Union, in the Russian Empire. People who live in Russia's south, who will be working for the Russian for the Russians, and they will have no ambitions. They will not need their own statehood. That's their vision of Ukrainians. And when Ukrainians tell about their position, about what they want, that results in anger causes anger in Russians. It's not only Putin's position or Shoigu's position, it's the overall Russian leadership's position, as well as common Russians, because it was not Putin and Shoigu who was guarding us in the prison. We were tortured by the common Russians from village of Parkino, Novozibkovo. There are many guards from other regions of Russia, from Buryatia, from Mordovia, from Penza, from many other cities and villages. And they had the same hate for us because we are Ukrainians. That's why my key message, don't believe Russia. They are lying. They are lying about this war. They are lying about their intentions. Their goal is to destroy Ukraine and destroy us as a nation. What can we do about it? Well, what can we do about this? Unfortunately, we cannot free in a military way, free our prisoners, our civilian prisoners, because they are across Russia, about 80 prisons with Ukrainians. But what we can do, and I'm reaching out now to the international experts and journalists from other countries, I urge you to bring this truth home to your governments, to make sure that your governments understand that Russia is lying, and your governments need to use diplomatic channels or some unofficial channels to put pressure on the Russia's political leadership, on some international platforms that Russia has access to put pressure on the Russian officials and to tell them that in Russia's jails you have civilians who have nothing to do with this war, and they should be freed. Because this policy of holding civilians, it's a terrorist state policy, terrorist state that Russia is, and I really urge you to do that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Dmytro, for finding the strength to share your experience and what awaits those who are under the influence of Russian world, of Russian peace. So I want to remind you that 26 journalists are now held in captivity by Russians, as are thousands of Ukrainian citizens. And of course, this should be a firm point of the peace process to bring back all the hostages. So we're going to discuss this and other topics during this conference. And so we have 200 registered participants and 100. We have 100 online guests, and we hope that we're going to have productive discussions these 2 days. So now we're moving to Ukraine and Global World panel, successful practices and how to multiply them. Over to you, Olena, Olena is going to facilitate this panel. Maybe we need 1 or 2 more minutes to set everything up. So we have international and Ukrainian speakers.
And the Global World.Successful Alexander Kornienko, who is the Deputy Chairman of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, who will deliver a special address. Mr. Kornienko, the floor is yours. Please.
You can speak Ukrainian. So, dear guests, dear excellencies, ambassadors, Verkhovna Rada members. So I think that during the panel we will have a more detailed discussion on things, but now I'd like just to greet you all for joining us here at this event, and I want to thank all the international guests who have managed to make it here to Ukraine, to Kiev, despite all these events with our energy sector and our blackouts and so on, but we can still have such events in a safe space, and these such events are important for us to have discussions and to plan our certain conclusions, and so why it is important for us. So war started with illegal annexation of Crimea and has to end with the liberation of Crimea and other territories. So I always turn to our Crimean Tatar indigenous peoples who have been waiting to come back to their homeland for 50 years. And we don't know how long we have to wait to travel to the Ukrainian-controlled Crimea, but we will do our best, and we have been doing a lot in the Verkhovna Rada to achieve that. So in a week's time, we're going to have the fourth international summit of Crimea platform, and I'd like to turn to the organizers and the moderators to prepare the points from this event so that we can share those in Stockholm. And we will, of course, develop this movement. So understanding Ukraine through the South. So this is an important motto, and we have been working along these lines. So our Ukrainian delegation was in Africa, in Uzbekistan, in Ukraine, so that we don't limit ourselves just to EU countries, G7 countries, and European continent, so that we spread the truth wider and broader. And of course, the Muslim world countries are under our attention, and we realize that we are speaking the same language, especially when it comes to cultural influence and cultural impacts of occupation. We have seen the renaissance of mosques, of cultural centers. This, of course, needs to be spoken about broadly. And of course we're going to talk about our prisoners of war, and we have a lot of civil hostages, and these are just many of them are just young people whose fault is actually because one of these young man just donated 50 hryvnia to support Ukrainian army. That was the reason to keep him, and also because he is a Crimean Tatar. It happened in the Crimea, so Russians. So the Russians, they behave just despicably. This is hard to endure by Ukrainian citizens, and there is a lot of imperialistic ambition in their behavior. But of course, the civilian and free people, they have to decide where to go, where to be. And so once again, I'm very thankful to you for being here, for representing your states and the Latin America, Asian countries, African countries. We have been working to engage with these countries closely, and we will keep up this work. So the Deputy Foreign Minister will reinforce this. So in fact, this night I just arrived from Istanbul, and so this is also one of the powerful axes, of supporting us in the Black Sea region, and so to bring back our civilian hostages. And Nariman Jalalov also did a lot to contribute to that, and such positive examples show that we have to keep up our work, and of course Crimea will be ours again, and so at some point we'll have Crimea Global in Bakhchisarai, in Yalta, in all the places that we would wish to. Thank you, Alexander. So I'd like to invite other speakers. Mariana Betze, Deputy Foreign Minister, Taras Vysotsky, the Deputy Head for Environment and Agriculture. So maybe eventually we'll have Vasily Gamyanin, the Ambassador of Ukraine to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Ali Aliyev, the CEO of Ukrainian Institute, and Galina Pustova, and Uria Francelli.
So, I think we will be switching from one language to another. I don't know how did you prepare the Ukrainians. I will start in Ukrainian, and Mr. Francelli.
Пане Корнієнко, трошки впродовж.
Mr. Kornienko, you told about the opportunities that are opened to support international relations and the parliamentarian effort. You told about the parliamentarian union. You are part of the Ukrainian delegation in the Interparliamentarian Union. And maybe you could give us some examples from your practice. How does it work? And I think another interesting aspect is the obstacles that you see in terms of the cooperation with non-Western countries. Yeah, thank you for this question. You know, what was striking to me was the first meeting in 2022 in the autumn. We met with one of the countries of the Gulf. I'm not going to tell you a specific country. It's a small country. And he sincerely didn't understand why we are fighting for half a year. What's going on? You are neighbors, you are part of the same region, you were in one big country. And I explained it to him, the situation, the 300 years period of imperialism, and his conclusion was that you are like Israel and Palestine, and it's going to go forever. You have a difficult situation. Well, I told him it's wrong to compare us, but probably there is some similarity. And honestly, our effort was about outreach and education, what Ukraine is, that it's a separate country, it's not Russia's province. And despite us being within one country, we are different nations, we have different languages. And up to the last 30 years, where Russia was trying to put pressure and shape our policy in Ukraine, they failed to do that through soft methods. That's why they fell back to Russia's standard tactics, now missiles and Shahids and troops. And sincerity always helps, the personal examples and personal stories. When we are talking about African countries, our military history is different, is not really helping, because in Africa there are around 70 conflicts, and when we tell about the military effort, they are saying we have the same thing. We have all these conflicts around Africa, in Sahel, in other regions. But when we mention the anti-colonial effort, that starts to help. When we tell about our influence on food security and about the deterioration of food security as a result of this war, this is the topic interesting to everyone. And unfortunately, in early days, in early months of the full-scale invasion, the prices started to rise, even for rice in Asia. Although Russian corn and Asian rice are in different regions. Even Latin America was worried. So these specific things, they help us to understand this conflict, why Russia invaded us, why we are fighting, what Russia wants to achieve as part of this war. We are explaining that, and that's the next step that helps us to get better understanding, especially with the countries that are also thought about these ideas. I mean, the reforms of the UN Security Council, that's what we are talking about. We need to do something about the fundamental principles of the world order if they are violated in such a manner. If the UN Charter is violated in Ukraine, other countries are saying it is violated in our countries as well. That maybe the UN Charter doesn't work or the Security Council doesn't work. Why? Because there are permanent members who are there, the countries with the nuclear arms, nuclear weapons. Okay, let's have non-Western country representatives there, from Brazil, from South Africa, and they will be defending their interests. And of course, Russian propaganda is hindering that. But you know what? When you're talking about Russian propaganda, it includes many things, and probably there are some failures on our side to better explain it. But overall, we can at least give some alternative view, especially to countries where media is developed. I mean, powerful, growing countries like in Asia and Africa, Indonesia, Nigeria, and South Africa. They have huge media markets, and we can compete there with Russians. If we are talking about the Gulf countries, it's of course cultural diplomacy, and soon there will be an event there. My dream was to have an event in Muslim countries. It's a really unique contribution for Ukraine that Crimean and Ukrainian singer is going to perform there and to bring Ukrainian and Crimean culture to those countries. Our ministry is doing a lot to support and promote Ukraine's economic agenda. That's really the key goal of diplomacy. Of course, Africa, it's a food market for us. We import also many things. But for Asia, we also we are exporting and importing many things. We have to remember that we can export new technologies and new means. And in Africa, we had a great USAID project. Unfortunately, now it was shut down. The project that enabled to support anti-corruption effort and use Ukraine's experience. Botswana was really interested in that. We visited Asia, and when we have our meetings with South Asia, Tamila Tasheva was there as well. Of course, we are talking about how to strengthen the economic ties, how to find new ways to export. So this is our holistic effort. There is no one single silver bullet. And We are doing what we can. We are not afraid of Russians. They are trying to prevent and put wrenches in the works when we work in on the same platforms. They are trying to prevent resolutions being taken, for example, by the Parliamentarian Assembly of the European Council. And Lesia Vasilenko did a lot at the last assembly meeting. I was in several situations where we had to sit almost at the same table. And of course, the Russian topic, they are trying to squeeze us out. But we should not be afraid of that. Yes, we don't have the same scope, the same resources they have, but the truth is on our side. That's why we will always win, because we are bringing truth to the world. We are telling things as they are. We are invaded, and now they are trying to blackmail the world. And the same goes for Crimea, and I'm going to repeat that continuously. Thank you to everyone who is with us, who supports us, and our Verkhovna Rada is ready and willing to cooperate with you.
Thank you. So, as Alexander brought up the economic aspects of Ukraine's cooperation with non-Western states, maybe I'll then break our planned consequence of speakers. And we have always thought of Ukraine as a breadbasket of Europe, and now it can be viewed from a different perspective. So the grain exports were blocked and then sold in other territories. So probably this economic sector is still a very important in the relations between Ukraine and non-Western state. Are we still talking of Ukraine? Can we still talk of Ukraine as breadbasket of Europe? Thank you for having me. Yes, so so there are several aspects that I'd like to cover. So Alexander brought up this case with rice, yes, and it's telling. In fact, there are states in the world that are stable importers, and would like this to change a bit, and I'll explain how we can help that. But I'd say most of the countries, particularly Latin America, they are import dependent in terms of produce, and so there is this calculation, and in 2021, in the year of 2021, the level of produce produced in Ukraine, well, this is for basic calories. This is to cover 400 million people in the world. So we're not calculating it towards a decrease, but we think that the produce that is grown in the temporarily occupied territories is still Ukrainian produce. So it's a separate thing whether it has to be used just as Ukrainian origin produce. So of course our potential is now different, and of course the Kakhovka dam disaster influenced the global food security because of the poor irrigation situation. So, but the volume of produce that is needed by this number of people is not exported anymore. Then it has certain implications. The growth, the increase of price by 35%. I mean, there hasn't been such an increase over last 20 years. And of course, the smaller export of Ukrainian grain, it influenced the global situation, because global markets, they are united, and of course it doesn't matter whether Ukrainian wheat goes to a global market, where it goes, but when it enters the global market, it makes the produce more accessible. And of course, this is possible just after the renewal of Ukrainian grain corridor since the second half of 2023. The trend became better and the Ukrainian produce started being more accessible. Second, very important aspect, as an export-oriented country, so it has a big share in providing, produce, humanitarian produce, supported by different funding sources up to. And there are countries that can produce a lot of produce, but So I mean, we speak of least protected categories who will need the biggest support, humanitarian support. And in the first place, from the humanitarian purposes standpoint, we the shared border was founded, and the grain from Ukraine for Ukraine initiative. So many will participate. And we still keep on inviting, participants. Now it has transformed into food for Ukraine. Why is it? What is important here? We started in 2022 with saying that we need some ships with grain just to let them out, and then used. But now we can talk about produce that doesn't need a special chain, about wheat, about oil, sunflower oil, about meat, canned meat, and this is taking place, and our partners are contributing to that, and there will be certain initiatives that will be announced, maybe, well, I'll not speak of them today, but maybe tomorrow, so I'll speak for a little bit more. I think so. I've been speaking for 4 minutes, so I have 3 more minutes now. It's important also to get to the transfer of technologies. We'll always be the country that provides the produce and the exporter. So we have to. So we're not getting more land, but I think that the market will be enough for everyone. I think that the technology transfer is important. It matters because Ukrainian representatives showed that they can be competitive. So there were no subsidies to support them, but they're still competitive. They keep working. The use of drones, the use of the systems of parallel use, and it's so we can do that. It would be important to do the transfer to the countries of the global south, where the people's potential allows this to happen. of course, knowledge matters and outreach matters, and also the transfer of inventions and further maintenance and support. So what we're talking now is to get to the stage where the produce can be produced with the support by Ukrainian knowledge base. And of course, we will speak of that more tomorrow. And I was lucky to meet last week OSCPS had so they unite 60 countries from the Caribbean and other regions, and I have been invited to a forum. We have established ties, liaison, so they haven't been aware of our initiatives. So what Alexander has brought up is important to reinforce our message. So of course we have shared with them the Food for Ukraine initiative, and we'll be happy to continue to work with them. But of course it also matters for the logistics. So the next point is that we have shared economic interest, because there are things that we still need, like the fertilizers, phosphorus, the calcium. We don't have them, and of course we need those assets. So, and there can be the two-way engagement. There are some types of fruits that we import. So also the turnover, the trade turnover can be increased both ways, so that it's a win-win. So I think that my 7 minutes are over. So Mariana, I think my next question is for you. I think that we can say that the Russia's war against Ukraine, and I'm referring to 2014, pushes us to reach out to countries in the parts of the world where we haven't really had any ties. And we can see that there have been initiatives since 2021, like setting up diplomatic representations in some countries. So what do you think of setting foot or starting cooperation in the countries where we haven't been present? So hello, colleagues. I'm really honored to be able to speak here, because this topic is important. That when we speak of this genocidal war of Russia, we say that it's not just a war against Ukraine, it's a war against the whole Europe and against the whole democratic world, against the UN principles that what was mentioned by Alexander here. So the inviolability of borders are imperative, and other things are imperative norms. I can see a number of journalists present here from different states, and this principle, it can be unbreakable. But what Russia has done, it has showed that it can ruin it all the safety and security infrastructure globally, and it is. There is this impunity that we can observe. And when the aggression started in 2014, all our efforts were directed at stopping this, at making our country safe. But eventually we realized how important it is to work with the countries of the Global South, because each of these countries make their contribution to the global security. And since this war is non-region-centered, but it touches upon, it violates globally the rule of law. We realized that, of course, we need to expand our cooperation to the countries of Africa and other countries. And of course, we understand that it's not, we realize that it's not easy to set up an embassy during the war. But we have opened 10 embassies in the countries of Africa: Mozambique, Botswana, Ghana, one in Philippines. And we're planning in the nearest future 4 diplomatic representations in the Latin American countries. And it's not just opening an embassy. It's behind it is the realization that we need to know the approaches and the priorities of the countries, and especially the external, the foreign policy priorities, because we understand that these are different from ours, but we also have a lot of in common. The principle of sovereignty in the first place, which is shared by any country. This is compulsory, and also the shared value is the value of human life, because when Russia just holds our people captive, abducts our children, this is the matter of humanity. And these are the shared matters. And we have prepared a number of advocacy visits. Daria Yerasimchuk will lead those to countries of Africa and Latin America, Argentina and Botswana, to aid the situation with the children that we have brought back from deportation, so that their voices are heard. So this is about Russification, militarization, indoctrination. Children don't have an opportunity. They're deprived of the opportunity to contact their parents. So this is a matter of humanity, really. And what also matters is the correct communication with the Global South states. So the Foreign Affairs Ministry has developed several strategies. One of them was in 2024 with the LATAM states strategy, and we're now working on the new one. And this is the matter of security, the international law, and our presence in UN, in UNESCO, and other international players. So I was in Samarkand recently, in Uzbekistan, as part of a delegation where we did really tireless work to get rid of Russia from the board, and you know, who we received the biggest support was the countries of the Global South, and I am thankful to each and every representative of the Global South states. But they supported us not because we're a victim of war, but because we are struggling and fighting to restore the international water, so that the UN principles are intact, and that is what we share. And the UN statute, it needs to be a working document, and also the right of the Ukuna right that Russia is still part of the UN Security Council. It's part of UNESCO. There are no mechanism to get rid of them, but there must be a consensus, because, well, Russia, it has been violating each and every principle of international law by carrying on aggression, and on the scale, on this global scale, engaging with Iran, Korea, China. It has been confirmed. And this conflict has been internationalized, and the impacts of this war have consequences not just for Ukraine, but for the whole world.
Thank you. Do we have Vasyl Hamyanin, the ambassador of Ukraine, for us to be able to connect him and ask about specific examples? Dear Mr. Hamyanin, we can see you. Hopefully you can hear us. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Please check your sound settings. No sound. Just a moment. Yeah. Now I'm allowed to turn my mic on. It's a really pleasure and honor to be able to speak to such a great audience. Hello to everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining. And what I would like to say is that Ukraine's embassy in DRC was opened in April 2024. And this is an example of a new Ukrainian embassy opened up in this country. Example of Ukraine's efforts, diplomatic efforts, for example, in DRC. Dear Ambassador, Your Excellency, it would be really great to hear from you some examples of this work. Before that, you were an ambassador to Indonesia, which is also interesting to our forum. Can you tell us about your work now in Africa and maybe highlight some stories of collaboration between Ukraine and Africa? Well, when it comes to DRC and Africa, my really question is why so late? Why it hasn't been done 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I mean, Africa is really important to the world and to Ukraine. And we have discussed that for many years with my colleagues, with the experts. Africa is our market. It's people who are single-minded. And unfortunately, throughout these years, I'm talking about the 30 years and previous decades, unfortunately, throughout this time, the Kremlin propaganda is really active in this region. And what's called soft power, it's really almost perfect. The intrigues and provocations, it's happening on a regular basis, even in the countries where Russia is not present as a powerful player on the market or investor. Still, they are quite powerful using their soft force. For example, Russia increased spending on fellowships for South African students. We cannot compete with that. But if we are, I mean, I compare it, I always used percentages to compare. If Ukraine has at least 1% for some country, it's minus 1% of Russia's presence. So we are squeezing them out. We are doing what we have to do. It's hard because the Russians are deeply rooted in this region. They are using every opportunity. I mean, as we have seen, these propaganda tools and toolkits. Just to give you an example, Patrus Lumumbeki, he has nothing to do with the communism and communist ideology, with the Soviet Union and so on. He was a classical liberal fighter for independence, even not a populist. He was fighting for independence without any compromises. But because of this situation where he was forced to reach out to the Soviet leadership in 1961, he was then killed. And since that time, the flags of the communist regimes of the Soviet Union, they included this politician. So I just don't understand why we decommunized Lumumba in Kyiv, why we remained his street. But when it comes to what we can do, as Mariana said, there is no single recipe. no universal way how to work in African countries, because countries are different there. There are 9 neighbors of Congo, and all of them are different languages, different cultures, different political regimes, different stories, colonial past. But what we can do is to think out of the box and work with every society who was there in the past, which kingdoms they had, what was famous about them, what was happening there. We are talking about Ukraine as a territory where we had a great civilization, Tripilia civilization, which has nothing to do with the present people. We are talking about Ukraine that had democracy in terms of people's meetings that elected their rulers. And now we are surprised to learn that in the kingdom of Lumba in central Congo, there were similar processes. The concept, it existed, and it existed from the king, which means double rule, the rule of the king and the elderly council. And it's great. It was 17th century. We can draw parallels. We have people who perceive Ukrainians. I mean, Ukrainians are not really people don't really know about Ukrainians here in Congo. And I have to explain that Ukraine has suffered oppression and slavery, and people are surprised to learn that that we are basically had the same experience in the past. And we have to break it down to the societies, and we can start with different groups of people. We can start with the grassroots, about outreach campaigns with different villages and communities. We can work with the universities. Recently we had a lecture by our cleric in 5 universities, and it was really tense. We were even concerned, but it was really important for people to understand who we are, where we come from, what are our origins, and why here in Congo we can be useful to you, to these people, and you can be useful to us as partners. The key topic is partnership, of course, and it's right. When we are building parallels, I mean, Holodomor, genocide that were happening in different countries, including Congo. We started to talk about this topic. We still go back to the partnership theme. What can you learn from us, and how can you be useful to us? So now we are working quite actively to make sure that we can translate our literature into the local languages. I mean, Bantu, Swahili, Lingala, Chalube. The languages that are not used anywhere except for Central Africa. If we are successful in these projects, it will mean that we will be able to reach out to common people there that can read only these languages. So the key message is we have to diversify our approach. And unfortunately, as a former scholar, I was involved in academic activities for some time. I would like to reach out to everyone and tell that you have to look and get in touch with the media, with the academia, who deeply understand these topics, and they can give you such valuable pieces of advice and suggestions and clues and references to literature. It will save you years of time in terms of diplomatic efforts. It will save your time and will prevent you from making the same mistakes. Because African studies in Ukraine is not so developed in Ukrainian academic circles. That's why there is a danger and probability of us making mistakes, taking wrong actions. We have to be careful, but at the same time, we need to be moving forward. I mean, Africa, it's terra incognita to us, and we opened many embassies there. And I really want that we continue this great effort, this great trend to open diplomatic embassies. That's the right decision. And it's better now than never. And it's really important to make sure that Ukraine, that the Central Africa and other regions, they see the colors of our flag as well. Thank you. Thank you, dear ambassador. And you mentioned quite an interesting thing, because we are talking not only about the fact that Africa has to learn about Ukraine, but also Ukraine has to learn about Africa, about different countries. And exciting case, the renaming of Patrice Lumumba Street in Kiev. This street was named after the Pavel II. Although in this situation, Patrice Lumumba became a hostage of the Soviet Union, exploiting his name in the Soviet propaganda. Thank you, dear ambassador. And I'm trying to build connections from the first speaker to the next speaker. Now I would like to give the floor to Ali Maliyev. The ambassador mentioned that African studies in Ukraine are not well developed, and I know that Ukrainian Institute is doing a lot to make sure that there are Ukrainian studies in different regions. And today we mentioned that recently, and I think not only Jamala's concert, but also the relations being built between Ukraine and Qatar. And as a result of these relations being built, Jamala is now able to participate in an event there. So could you organize Jamala's concert there in Doha? Hello to everyone. Happy to see everyone, dear partners and friends. First of all, I would like to thank the participants who came to us from different regions to Ukraine. It's really important because it's about support, it's about common and joint actions, it's about our dialogue. And I would like to thank Crimea Global team for their efforts, who are making this event possible every year. Now, to answer your question, what I would say is that Jamala's concert or the concert of any other performer in different countries of the world, it's one thing. But organizing a joint cooperation with the local partners, with local stakeholders, with local stars, this is quite a different thing, and this is what cultural diplomacy means. We are working with three quite subtle matters: the knowledge, the connections, and joint co-creation. And recently, I came up with this formula for myself, why Ukraine needs to work in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in Arab countries. Because we are building these long-term partnerships and engagement. Partnerships and engagement, they lead to mid-term, long-term trust. And trust results in support. But this should be a two-way road. This cannot be play around one gates. You have to interact with people and work together. That's why when we start working in these countries, we start with the research. And Ukrainian Institute, together with its partners, with the think tanks and universities, we are now presenting a series of research starting from Mexico and Argentina and Brazil. Recently, we presented Kenya and Nigeria and South African Republic, and as well as India and Indonesia. And these are the key countries to us right now, where the Ukrainian Institute is focused on cooperation with them. Second thing we are talking about is that basically we launched this stream, this effort in the Ukrainian Institute with the MFA of Ukraine 2 years ago. And this is a new effort for us, it's true. And what Vasil said, that we in Ukraine, we don't have much expertise. We have to do a lot of homework to gain this expertise, because every country, in every country, we have to create our own and design an individual approach to make sure we don't do stupid things. And another point is about collaboration and cooperation. Jamala's project in Doha, Qatar Opera, it's not only about Jamala's performance, it's about engaging with Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra, with 60 plus musicians, with the management, with Ukrainian conductor, Ukrainian conductor Vladimir Serenko. It's the Crimean Tatar texts in Ukrainian, in Crimean Tatar, in English and in Arab language. And this is what creates understanding. And about a month ago, we organized a similar project in Argentina with Daja Braja and Chango, the famous musician. And I would like also to highlight the engagement with the embassies in those countries, as well as with foreign countries in Ukraine. For example, this Argentina project, we organized it in a tandem with the Argentinian embassy in Ukraine, and in Qatar, we worked a lot with our embassy in Doha. Thirdly, the academia. We entered the countries that have poor knowledge of Ukraine and quite often a negative image. That's why, first of all, we need to talk about ourselves. We need to explain who we are, rather than go to them and tell how bad Russia is, because they know understanding of Russia, unlike Ukraine. Otherwise, it looks strange. There is some country coming to you, starting to complain about somebody, but you don't understand this country. To make sure that people understand us, we have to work with the scholars. And a year ago, the First Lady and Crimean Platform and the President's office in Crimea, in the office as well as in charge of culture and sports, and the ministry, foreign ministry, we launched a global coalition of Ukrainian studies. And this is basically about the new understanding of Ukraine's role in the academia. It's about building relations with the scholars. In parallel to Jamala's concert in Doha, we signed a memorandum of understanding with one of the Qatar universities. My colleague, head of the board member of the Ukrainian Institute, who was in Qatar, she was leading this effort. And that's the first step. Then it's about these people understanding better Ukraine. We need to be ready for people to learn more about Ukraine, and it means teaching students in universities, students that are going to be the future elites and making decisions about the engagement with Ukraine. This week we are going to sign similar memorandum with Indonesia. Next, we are working with the key platforms. Ukraine has limited resources. That's why it's important to make sure that our voice is heard at big, major academic platforms of the civil society. That's why over the last 2 years, we managed to enter the key literary platforms, starting from Guadalajara book fair, and in Mexico, the Aki Festival that is going to be held in Nigeria. There will be our writers there, and Jaipur Literary Festival in India. And this is how we collaborate and engage with these countries, with these festivals, and this is how we represent our voice. And lastly, what I started with was engagement as a two-way road. That's why I think, to me and to many colleagues of mine who are working with these countries, we really want to make sure that inside Ukraine we have more knowledge and understanding of those countries that we are building relations with. And again, it's a long process, it's a long-term strategy, and I'm really glad that the Ukrainian state and the experts started to play this long-term game. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for these insights. So we have brought up here, Taras brought up here the digital technologies and the digital exchange for the future. I think that probably it's the right place to hand it over to Galina. Could you share with us, maybe at this point, what is interesting in the Ukrainian experience and expertise? So, because we can see that Ukraine has been quite actively developing in the digital sphere, and in 2022, I think there has been a new position or job title created, Chief Digital or Digital Transformation Officer. And so what can be exported in this regard in terms of expertise? Thank you. Thank you. Dear participants and guests, and I think that what you're doing is makes our digitalization sphere visible. So for 4 years we have been experiencing the full-out invasion, and we have so been over. We have got to the 5th place in the world ranking. And we are first in this ranking in terms of engaging with the citizens for education. And which means that Ukraine has selected digitalization as its first priority, and that we are ready to transform to pursue this goal. And we do not do the bureaucratic processes. We don't just use them online. No, we completely change our approach because each of the colleagues that engage with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and each institution and agency has a CDTO, a Chief Digital Transformation Officer, and is responsible for leading the transformation processes. As far as on the state level, and of course our experience in investing in ambiguity matters. Everyone speaks about it now, that the world is undefined, so to say, but by using our Ukrainian grounds, we can navigate Milk Tech cluster. We can step out with our services, and we can provide an open code to our MDA service. We have set up the position of CDTO. So So unfortunately, 1,500. So we still have 1,500 hromadas that have a digital leader, digital head. They are not now titled CDTO, but still they are responsible for digitalization. And each hromada has different needs. Some of them are close to the front line. Other hromadas are under temporary occupation. And some hromadas have become centers of public life because they have hosted a lot of wounded and also a lot of IDPs. And this digital officer, they work to cover two strands. On the one hand, it's to implement digital decisions on the state level, and also the other strand is the bottom-up one, when they have to listen to the needs of the communities and cover those needs. So in 2022, initiated by Mikhailo Fedorov and Valeria and supported by Visa Foundation and GIZ and the government of Switzerland, we have set up the City of Campus initiative, and I was part of the team, and we realized that it was quite unique on the global level. So there are lots of digitalization classes, and there are digitalization trends very popular in business, but no one teaches digital transformation in the state sector. There are lots of challenges in this respect. You cannot just go for particular target audience. You cannot just target the people that are into gaming or that are up for learning through a game. But we have explained to our partners that online marriage may sound a little bit odd or exotic. It's still a good novelty, and why it was prioritized. And there is a reason to that. Ukrainians know why it is so, but for our international partners, they may be unaware. A lot of Ukrainian citizens are close to the contact line, and they are serving, they are in combat, and they are unable to go back home and to marry. And many Ukrainian citizens have left Ukraine for other countries, and this is relevant for them too. So also to face the consequences of the events that can take place in Ukraine matter, how to deal with them. If a person has gone missing, or if they have been held captive, so for spouses, it's important to have this marriage online. And so this is also about creating the positive loop. So we have talked to the manager, digitalization manager responsible for the Balkan region, and we showed how it worked, also as part of Tallinn conference. And my colleague and I were just talking and with such high spirits. It was a high-spirited exchange. So because the service was quite well, could be used with a positive flow, and he also could see how a person was using a stage service and was smiling because it really was so smooth and like starting a private. Registering yourself as a private entrepreneur, it now takes 15 to 30 minutes, 50 minutes each step, and Ukrainians remember how it used to be, how it used to take much longer. So that's what we can share with the world. That's the expertise that we can share, and there is a demand for that. So that's how we helped the Polish colleagues with M-Obywatel, a Polish software. Now we work with the UK side. Also in Poland, they several months ago they launched an application supported by the Berlin Center. We were part of aiding the effort of creating a database of training curricula and courses, and it also envisages the creation of communities and sharing experiences. We're not speaking of highly practical thing now, but it's just about engaging with experts from all over the world, and we're trying to engage with the representatives of people from different states and continents to get their experience on board, their lessons learned, and due to this cooperation between our Foreign Affairs Ministry and the Ministry of Economy and other ministries that do these exchanges, that cooperate and reinforce this message that Ukraine has this expertise, we gain more support and in worldwide, and more respect. And I could notice that how international colleagues, they recognize our expertise, and how we discussed it in Cape Town, where we cooperated with state bodies, and how the World Bank representatives in Brazil, how they said that Ukrainian experience is unique because the population is big and the country is big, and that's why that explains why everybody wants to learn. And I think that Ukraine has made an enormous step, and we have the purpose, we have the potential to move ahead, especially with this CDTO initiative. And several months ago, we also have set up the cyber security heads initiated, and also as part of international cooperation, I'd like to bring up the initiative that was initiated about 1 year ago, a Talon mechanism. This was initiated by 12 NATO countries. They signed this MOU with Ukraine on strengthening the cybersecurity element, and this. Thanks to this initiative, we could launch the cybersecurity programs. We cooperated with Germany, with France, with Estonia, and Norway is about to join this initiative, and other countries are also about to join. So it started as intelligence to intelligence exchange. Now it's more for broader public and wider public, and I can see that each workshop is now not just one-way learning, but it's about experience exchange. And with each cyber attack, we grow stronger. We learn about how to counter those attacks. This is something highly important because this is about protecting human lives, and with each step, with each such stage, Ukraine grows stronger to fight off the attacks of a giant like the Russian Federation. And also we have more and more lessons to share with our partners, and also this digitalization development also helps us communicate better, as we have lots of scholarships and to foster engagement into this digital transformation sphere. We have over 30 programs now, and we have over 1,300 alumni. Over 2.5 or about 2 years we have been in operation, and one of the alumni, Artem Stanko, the state statistics office employee, he came up with GPT, application, related application, which does very great analytical work, and this is a very great and accessible resource that can help us analyze figures.
Thank you. It's really interesting. The cybersecurity topic is really important because we have seen that the modern world war is going on different levels, and cyber war is part of the war and the way it looks in 21st century.
For your presence here, my idea was that you will hear what Ukrainian speakers say, and then I will ask you what resonates with you. Maybe you may provide us with some kind of a cold shower, I don't know. In general, of course, it is interesting how this Ukrainian story looks like in countries like Brazil or Latin America in general, and maybe you see some problems or challenges that you would like to pay our attention to.
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me here for the second time. I was here last year, and I already told the organizers that I will come back as many times as it takes until the message sinks in the rest of the world. So I have a little bit of a cold shower too, because despite all the different approaches that Ukraine has towards the Global South, and my first comment will be regarding the Global South, which I know is not a homogeneous thing, so maybe the approach for different African countries should be the different approach to the Latin American countries. But I think that this topic of colonialism, and I recognize the importance of it. I recognize what Russia is trying to do here, but I don't think that it should be the main approach. That's my first topic, because colonial narratives, it fosters connections, but it doesn't create long-term relationships. It can create like a historical empathy, a momentaneous impact, but it's not going to solve anything. We have to remember that Latin America, I'll talk from my perspective from Latin America. Latin America changes governments all the time. Brazil is now a country ruled by a left-wing government, but next year there might be a right-wing. And even a right-wing government might change its stance. We saw that after Trump did what he did to Zelensky, Argentina's president, Javier Milei, he erased all the posts that he had on social media in support of Ukraine. So that's something that should be, we should pay attention to. I think that believing that historical empathy is enough would be putting too much faith in the stability of a region that is never stable. So you should pay attention when it comes to that. So first point, Ukraine should go beyond the colonial narrative. I know it's important for you. It resonates with some people in the Global South, but not with everyone, not all the time. And you also waste a lot of time doing that, because when government changes, you have to start all the seducing process all over again. The third point is that what creates lasting relationships is pragmatism. And Latin America is more pragmatic now than ever. Not because it wants to be, but because it has to be. Donald Trump is forcing us to do that too. So I would move, and I know, and I heard something that was being said now by Alim, that different forms of cooperation should be invested on. You have the food security, because Latin America is very sensitive when it comes to grain prices, to the prices of fertilizers as well. When it comes to security cooperation, we have to remember that Latin America is very scared when it comes to the urban violence, street gangs, drug trafficking. So there should be some room to work together there. Digital military technology, something that Ukraine masters in. Latin America is far from being as good as Ukraine on, energy and agricultural partnerships too, because that would be a place to work on that would also have immediate impact. It's not a long-term thing, so you can start getting the results. And you have to show these countries that not supporting Ukraine and not being an ally of Ukraine is more expensive than being an ally of Ukraine. And you need to create technical dependence. So when a new government arrives, even if it's ideologically different, if it doesn't get moved by the costs are going to be too big to ignore, and they will still support. And lastly, I think even when it comes to the cause of the return of the kidnapped children, you can only get the support if you have, you can only, when it comes to the return of the children, you can, it depends on international pressure. And you can only get this international pressure when you have international mobilization, when you have multilateral legal tools, and there will only be pressure if there are real relationships. And that's when I go back to the beginning. The relationship, it has to be real. And Ukraine, I know I criticized the rhetoric of colonialism. I basically said you should choose pragmatism instead, but you can choose both. You can choose both, but I would prioritize pragmatism because I think it's the only one that will lead to having permanent, long-term relations.
Thank you very much. I just want to mention that we have like 10 minutes till the end of our panel, till lunch. So if I may, I just want to use this time to ask probably one last question, and you will decide who would like to answer this question. So we mentioned Donald Trump's presidency. Mr. Fancelli mentioned that it influenced as well how countries of Latin America behave with Ukraine. It is interesting, do you feel the pressure of this new US administration towards this international politics, and how did it become more difficult for Ukraine to build these relations? And do you need to look for some other ways to, I don't know, to reach minds and hearts of non-Western countries? Можливо, пане Корнієнко.
Maybe you would like to say something? Yeah, I have a great example of that. I have a great example. The new administration is implementing a project with Central Asia, 20 billion of investments in Kazakhstan and other countries, and it's really it's not Russian investments, it's Ukrainian victory, basically, this project. The more foreign money will be there, the further away these countries will be from Russia. So it's not always that the policy of the US administration of Trump is putting pressure. Maybe the soft skills, the soft methods are not working anymore, I mean grants, but the economic direct support is really important and and contributing a lot. Because Chinese companies spend a lot on these countries, but Russia is basically taking advantage of these countries. They are really using these countries, and it's a big problem for the world, not only for Ukraine. And I believe that this movement, it started under Biden. I think it's still there. The US programs focused on investments in Africa, I think they were stepped up. they had this strategic goal of reaching out and making on a par with Russia and China in terms of investments, and I think they will be going forward with that. Of course, the key focus for the US is the Southeastern Asia. That's their key priority. But when it comes to Africa, it's also important, and Latin America, that's their direct interest. They are close. There are many other players that are trying to influence this space. Sorry, but we also mentioned the shutdown of USAID and this. Well, let's look at this as an opportunity. We have a change of wind, as the Chinese said. Let's build windmills if the wind changed. I mean, we had half a year to go through all these stages of acceptance, of anger and bargaining and so on. We now need to be looking for new opportunities. In the parliament, we also struggled with that. I was at conference last year. I was at the conference last week, and the participants also were talking about that. But anyway, we don't have these mechanisms. We have Qatar government supporting culture. We have other organizations that we don't know about, but these organizations, they have the capacity to offset the USAID projects if they really contribute. Yes, it means more effort for us. We will have to change our mindset. But I believe that we are not using the potential that we have. First of all, there are many governments that are willing to support us through their dedicated projects. They are ready to spend on the non-Western countries. And we can participate in that. We really participated in such projects with the UK, and it's really working. And another stream is the Commonwealth. We haven't worked with the Commonwealth countries. It's a big opportunity. There is parliamentarian dimension, cultural projects. This is that also includes non-Western countries. 4 or 5 African unions. We are working with some of them. Latin America. I mean, the festival of Mercosur and other organizations. We have to be observers there, I believe, if possible. We are observers in Astana. It opened up a lot of opportunities to us for new projects and cultural diplomacy. Well, we can create audio guides under the First Lady's initiative. We just need to do this work with our embassies, with our MFA. And even if we have a few visitors, it still will be working. It's about our promotion. So I'm quite optimistic. We have to learn how to work in a different way. Mariano, maybe you would like to conclude?
Since we're having lots of colleagues from the Global South, first on the USA. USA is a strategic partner of Ukraine, an important ally, and of course, what Russia wants to do, it wants to break the transatlantic unity among EU member states, NATO member states, between Ukraine and other allies, and this is important to understand that we need to keep this transatlantic unity, and unity is the response to bringing the peace closer, unity in responding to Russian aggression. We should not let Russia be rewarded for its crimes. We should not let Russia be rewarded for the crime of aggression. We should not let Russia run away without any accountability. Second, on the methods and our new approaches towards the Global South, what is important, and our colleagues underline very well, first, of course, it is a political and institutional framework, how we work with the Global South. Indeed, there is a huge demand to understand who is Ukraine, what are Ukrainians, what are we doing, and how do we live. Of course, that's important to promote Ukraine through cultural diplomacy, public diplomacy, to promote Ukrainian cinema, modern art, and modern literature. And indeed, this is an extremely powerful tool, especially in the Global South. Second, of course, economic opportunities and digitalizations, cybersecurity. These is expertise where Ukraine is very good and can transfer its knowledge to these countries. Third, of course, tackling disinformation. Disinformation in the Global South. It's very powerful, and how our ambassador to Congo said, yes, it's powerful everywhere. We understand that each country of the Global South has its own relations with Russia. But what is needed is to show also that each and every country, be it in Africa, Asia, or Latin America, can stand up to the violations of the UN Charter. Because this is about each country. It's not only about Ukraine. This is about the principle whether we as an international community are ready to adhere to the UN Charter and implement the principles of territorial integrity within international recognized borders. And this is, of course, about Crimea Global, about Ukraine's territorial integrity, but also about others, because it opens a Pandora box. If Russia gets away without any accountability, it opens a huge Pandora box for any dictatorship, that it can violate the rules, it can try to annex territories, to use force against other countries, and this should not be a new norm in our relations. Not a single country is safe if its own sovereignty and territorial integrity is not protected. And that's why the outcome of this war will define the outcome of each and every country in the Global South as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Betsa. And I also want to say thank you to all the participants of the first panel of the Crimea Global 2025. Thank you very much. We now have time for lunch, some networking, and maybe some discussions. Thank you, and we will continue in 1 hour.